Welcome back to the show, Nat. How you going?
Well, Tom, as always for a Friday.
Can't believe it's November, right? It's end of year. What's going on?
Yeah, well, I don't actually even know what the month of November looks like. It speeds off so quickly, and I think my attention has been basically hijacked, which is what we're going to be talking about today, isn't it?
What distracts you the most with your attention? Do you think, like, if is it sort of like just out of interest for a clinical psychologist and a busy business person that you are? Like, is it things like Instagram? Is it? I mean, I'm not sure if you're an Instagram person. Like,
Yeah,
what are the things that sort of get you distracted? I'll share with I'll share
it's
with you what mine are as well
yeah,
after you
yeah.
share
I
yours.
think isn't it funny you say that? I think I get distracted by little life admin tasks
Yeah.
that I can get really bogged down in. So little things like I like to deep dive, and I do enjoy it. But like if we were going to a restaurant, like I'll go and figure out what's going to be the best restaurant. So like again, every year we take my parents out for a lunch just for their Christmas, and I always like to be really perfect. I'm a little bit perfectionistic like
Yeah.
that. So I can go down those rabbit warrens for hours, Tom, and I have to make sure very much that I've done all my other little tasks that I need to do for the day before I start going into my little
Yes.
study at home, where my husband would just say I'll just like silently leave her, because it's also my kind of disconnection as well. It's again, that the whole Instagram, social media apps are very careful that I don't go down that rabbit warren anymore, but I used to. So that
Mm,
was a major distraction there. Yeah. How about
yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, for me, like I go through patches of being super disciplined, but I find if I'm under stress or I'm feeling, I get sort of stressed in November every year, and I think it's the end of the year feeling that's coming up, and I know that we've got a short period of, well, the weeks sort of disappear pretty quickly at this
Mm,
pointy end of the
mm,
year. So I actually get stressed in November through to the end of the year, and that's when
yeah,
my discipline of being disciplined with my attention really goes down the hill. So the thing that really takes me away from my or distracts me is really my phone, like just in general. So whether that's emails, a little bit of social media. I'm not big on. I don't share a lot of stuff on there, but
mm,
I'm probably one of those annoying people that just maybe I'm one of those older guys that's just lurking on the platforms and just viewing things. That sounds creepy. I don't mean it that way, but
yeah.
I'm participating, but I'm not really, but I'm still on it. So
Yes.
yeah, when I'm tired, when I'm a bit stressed, perhaps this is where I go, where my attention goes to shit. So I really need to be careful to throw the phone away or move it away, and just, okay, if you get an hour of undistracted work done today, Tom, you're doing great. Like it's kind of like you're doing great if you can do it that way. Now we
Mm,
are talking about metacognition today, which is a
yeah.
really big word. And to be honest, when we talked about sharing this on or having a discussion about it, I had absolutely no idea where you were going with it. I know what cognition means. I don't know what metacognition means. So tell us,
Yeah.
what is it?
So, Tom, it's a fancy word for what we all know and do, I suppose, hundreds of times a day. Okay, so it's basically it's a scientific study of how the mind can actually be aware of and control its own activity. So it's kind of like thinking about thinking, and understanding how our minds work. It really just then gives us that insight into how we can use it a lot more productively, and how we can be more capable for that self-regulation and that self-improvement. It is a bit of a fuzzy concept, so um, I like to look at, I suppose, a metaphor here, an analogy, of thinking of the brain as both having the software and the hardware, where the software is more of our thoughts and our feelings, and our conversations with others. The hardware is the neurons and the connections between them. So really that grey and that white matter, or creating it from grey to white, is what we do to aim to connect the two, is really where that metacognition does lie. And it's really, I suppose, it's really important now to kind of come back on this area of metacognition in our daily life, because, you know, exactly what we both just said, the modern technology, the apps, the games, the social media, online content, it really has just hijacked our learning pathways of our brain, right? So what we're seeing now in a lot of studies is our compulsive behaviors. Okay, we're more increasingly captive to that, and we watch it as well. Our attention issues has really plummeted, and our emotion regulation issues have really increased there, or dysregulation, dare I say. Obviously, the pandemic poured just fuel on this fire. And it's really, because of social isolation and then the boredom as well, it's just really created this, I suppose, this reliance on devices for social interaction, and also being bored. Like the amount of times, like I was on the train this morning going into a meeting, and I just looked around and I kind of really, really consciously put my phone away and just to kind of think about what we were talking about today, like rather than write down notes or research it. I was actually going, well, what do I actually know before I delve into the World Wide Web for extra information? Like, what do I actually know about this? And I was just reflecting upon that, and I just looked at every single person on that train, bar 3 people, had their phones rather than a book or rather than something. Like it's like we don't allow ourselves to reflect, to look around, to even just to think about what might the day lie ahead, how are we going to approach the day? And we can do it with this automated thinking. And that's where we just said exactly what you said, where did the month go? Because we're in this autopilot all the time where we might not be doing things in the most productive way because we're not stopping and thinking about how we're doing it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Like, who's this weirdo on a train, not with her phone? It was you. It was you just staring.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, no one noticed me, Tom. No one noticed me. So
staring outside at the outer world. Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. I think I think on the topic of like just generally being distracted all the time or feeling like there's a lot going on, the analogy I use is like with a computer, you might have tabs open, like if you're on a desktop and you've got, by the end of the day, you've got 15 tabs open. I think that's how a lot of people are feeling, is like, oh, I've got just a lot of things happening. If you have the discipline of opening 1 and maximum 2, just how you feel is a lot different and a lot nicer, because you don't feel like, oh shit, I've got 15 things on the go. And also the other analogy I use is like an antivirus software on your computer. It's always working in the background, and sometimes that's how that's how our brain works. We don't think we're thinking or stressing or worrying about things, but in the background, that antivirus software, being your brain, is actually just chipping away, just maintaining your stress levels just at a certain point. And so metacognition, back to that, it's really about connecting you called it the hardwire of the brain and the
hardware.
Hardware. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Interesting. So it's really like it sounds a lot more. It sounds very scientific, but from an application point of view, the big push in schools, it's great. They use a lot of metacognitive strategies, which we'll go through in a minute, for studying. But they're really even bringing it into learning processes in the earlier ages. Like they see metacognition occurring in 18 months, 2-year-olds, on how they approach problems and how they can learn. So, it's something that we didn't know, this fancy word, when we were probably in primary school, Tom, but it's not to say that we can't now bring this into workforces and workplaces. And it's also a really good leadership tool, because it opens up to other team members to even, potentially champion certain aspects of a project that they may not have been assigned to. If we can just reflect on their skills, if we can just find out how they actually felt when they were doing, this project or this type of planning, or, working on this element of whatever it is in what industry you're working on, and being able just to sort out, was there another way we could have done it? Like, bringing different perspectives. It all leads back down to self-regulation, but better productivity in the end as well. So a really, really, really fun and good leadership skills. So there's sounds like there's some applications here for leaders or managers in understanding this a little bit, to bring this into a team environment, or perhaps the strategies, to bring this to life in a workplace or for an individual. How does that look? For the strategies for bringing this in, and I guess helping you learn a little bit better as well.
Yeah, yeah, because like what we want to do is we want to just try and find the, like, we want to find the processes involved when, when we plan, we monitor, we can evaluate, and then we can make changes to big, projects as a whole, or to even our own learning behaviors. And that is just where we can, it's got to being able to come back to that self-reflection, that stopping, that pausing, that, rather than going, okay, we've just done this, right, that's cool, okay, tick that off, then we're going to go into the next one. So we're just, what you said, we've got to get through our 15 tabs in there, where we don't actually stop to go, well, how could we have done that differently? Or how did that make us feel when we were doing that? You just said your emotion for the next 2 months is just stress. How could we actually be able to reflect upon that, where you may not feel stressed, you might feel stressed at certain times, but you may not feel stress all the time, but you don't allow yourself to think. So we want to be able to bring that back into the workforce, because in the end, like, that actually really helps teams as a whole to be able to not only find their, I suppose, a SWOT analysis from each team member, and then from the team as a whole, to determine what's going to be the best approach forward, or what can we try next time that might actually have a different outcome, or a more positive outcome, where we might actually end up knocking a few days off the project and get it in a little bit earlier. So little things like that is, it all comes back down to being able to have that time out to really think, and not feel guilty that we're taking that time out, or allowing ourselves to, and we talk a lot about diffuse thinking. I know we've talked about declarative self-talk. There's all these little strategies that we can kind of, or leaders can even emphasize and go and do, even to go and sit outside and just not take anything but a pen and paper, and go, okay, I've just walked out of that meeting, right? Or I've just been approached and we've just talked high level about a project. What do I actually know before reading anything more about it? What can I assume about that project that we're doing? Okay, I know that's a very vague, example, but what that then allows you to do by getting a pen and paper is allows you to actually delve into what you may know, which then starts to ignite your memory or your creativity, but then starts to create more of your style of thinking. And if we could get even each team member to go out and do this with no other distractions, it will be able to create, just some areas where we might then go, well, wait a sec, is this employee or team member, or even am I more of a visual learner? Do I learn best through imagery and graphics and documentary, or am I more of an auditory learner? Or am I more of a kinesthetic learner? Do I learn best through movement? Or am I more logical or mathematical? Or am I more intrapersonal?
Yep.
And what we can then do is that we can find out ourselves, like, well, where's our main strength? Okay. And where might be an area where we may be able to want to kind of up that ante. This is obviously probably more so work related here. But then to bring that back to a leader or to a team to say, well, this is where I feel like my strength's going to be, because I've actually had a really good think about it without any other distractions around me. I've allowed myself to essentially be bored, not in that sense. That, well, this is what I'm just focusing on, that singular task, and I'm taking tech out of it. I'm just going to take tech out just that minute. And it's amazing. It's amazing what you can achieve if you just had that confidence in just seeing where your brain can go and what that can do, and where you feel you might have that skill set that may or may not be highlighted at work in the beginning. Does that make sense? I think that we all should take stock about where we actually lie with our skills.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. I think as a, in a management sort of role or something like that, like the challenge now in hybrid working is you don't see everyone all the time, and that's okay. But you don't know how they think as well often, especially if you think about new members coming on board into a team. You know what their strengths are in terms of what they've told you, but to really understand where they're coming from straight away, it's pretty hard. It requires a lot of conversation and stuff. So that idea of just sort of putting everything down or reflecting prior to a meeting coming in, and then also getting, as a manager, understanding where everyone's strengths are. I guess that means that you can put them in the right seats on the bus to then get the best sort of outcomes for the project or future outcomes. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like we get pinned down with, position descriptions, for instance, and then we believe that that's what boxes us in. And obviously we all need some level of, loose parameters, but do they have to be so stringent? Is that an empathetic team? Are we utilizing our people or to the best of the ability? And those self-reflective questions, even to go and say for a leader to go, I'm going to go and give everyone a question or a higher level understanding again of this project. And then I want you to walk away, but I want you to even say, well, does my answer that you're going to give back to the leader, does it make sense given the information provided? What strategy did I use to solve the problem that was helpful? And how does any of this information conflict with my prior understanding? And this is where we can gain that clarification a lot better, where we can stay on the path a lot better with projects rather than go down a bit of a rabbit warren that a lot of leaders go, oh, dear me, we've got to stop here because we're actually taking the wrong lead. Let's go back on the path, but just making sure that everyone understands based on their learning style. But if you don't know your learning style because you've never kind of reflected upon it, kind of you're not setting yourself up for success.
That's great. And I think, I think back to, this is making me think of going back to like university and studying. And I think like what I learned pretty fast with my own learning about learning or thinking about learning is I was actually not very good with some of the real basic stuff. But as soon as it became a bit more of a visual type exercise or I was learning something, I literally had to write a story. If I was learning, let's just say something like anatomy, I'd basically write a story about the thing and then I would remember the story and then that would bring out the information. So I don't know what learning style that is exactly, but basically I had to make sure everything had a lot of meaning. I was terrible at just like, some people are really good at just repeating information back or they just hear it and they've got it. I had to really kind of draw it or write a story about it, which was weird, like quite weird, or at least it felt weird. But I feel like I picked that up early enough to then make myself at least learn faster or, not feel dumb basically around a bunch of smart people.
That's actually a metacognitive strategy as well. Like, you want to banish all that kind of language, which can be really overwhelming, especially in anatomy, and speak it in a story. And that can make that complex issue far clearer. And using those analogies and those metaphors on the way, which also then engages not only yourself, but then others when you're talking back to them and when you're trying to learn for those very intense scientific exams that some people on the other end are starting to understand what you say. Remember when we used to go with English, it's like when you used to write an essay, you'd always say, go and find someone who doesn't know anything about the topic and read it to them. And then if they understand what you're saying, then you're pretty much going to pass at least.
Yes.
The type of metacognition there, like, to be able to make sure that you're clear and you're kind of checking in on yourself and then going back and getting that feedback. A little bit like, I suppose it helps with EQ as well. It's like, that's part of a 360 EQ assessment. But it's interesting you say that because I did a science degree myself as well, and genetics and chemistry, no, not good for me. When I couldn't see it. And I couldn't understand it. For some reason in my mind that was just didn't work well for me. But when I got into zoology and I could feel and I could touch and then I could move around, I was very kinesthetic in my learning and I was also visual. So I know that they're my strengths. So I bring that into my workplaces where I've got lots of boards and I go back to the good old chalkboards. I've got them everywhere dotted around there and I'll write notes and everyone will know that's Nat Scribble. She understands what it means, but that's how she gets from the brain to the vision, and then I see it, and that's my massive part of learning, especially with diagrams, going back to concept maps, going back to visual maps. It's a really good way to even enhance your memory and to provide some clarification to go, okay, I know actually a lot in this area, but I need to know a little bit more up here. So this is where I need to then now understand what I need to tackle, but how can I tackle that? So again, it opens that up for that solution-focused problem solving. And in that time, it actually regulates, just like gives you self-regulation. So again, rather than coming in on that complete stress level, we're able to break it up.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think, like one thing I always conscious of is being maybe similar to you, maybe a bit more like visual. And there's always a whiteboard board with a lot of scribble on it. And then what is a bit of a bias you can have is then you assume that everyone else is visual. So you then, oh, look, I've done this thing on the whiteboard and I'm over here and I'm, so this leads to this. And then, but when you're presenting that to someone, you can there's always the person in the room that you can really tell. They're just like, I need more details. Like I need this needs to be a spreadsheet, Tom, not a bloody picture on a board. Like it only has meaning for me. Is something that I've become very conscious of, is that I've done the work. This is visual, but I know it. Like I know it because I've done it. So then it's really on the person that's maybe that type of person where they're like, look, this makes sense to me. It's having the understanding that like you need others to also do the work on it in their own way to then I guess elicit meaning for them so that then they understand it. But what you were suggesting earlier is kind of that idea of, if you're going into a meeting or a project, do some thinking beforehand. One strategy I wanted to share with you, and it's actually using technology, but in a more like, rather than everyone collaborating at once, it's kind of going a brainstorm before a meeting. So it's asking like a question up the top, a question down the bottom, and everyone just dumps their ideas in. I feel like that's a good one for people that aren't wanting to speak up in a group setting, or they're not as comfortable thinking and talking in those group settings because the extrovert's doing all the talking and they've got great ideas, but they never capture it in a meeting. So it's kind of that, it's not a brain dump, but it's more just considered thoughts prior to a meeting. What do you think about this? What tends to happen there is that those introverted people, if I want to give them that label, is they get their turn to talk because, did you write that? Cool. Tell us about that. So I feel like that's quite a good one for that hybrid working where, not everyone is comfortable on Zoom, and sometimes it's always the person that's the loudest that talks the most, or the most extroverted dominates those Zoom meetings. So it's a good one for capturing those more introverted people that have different learning styles altogether.
And it's a really good one as well, like just to kind of, when everyone was come together, is that there's a technique also called the muddiest point. And basically what it allows you to do is it quickly identify, the areas that people are finding the muddiest, so like the most confusing or the least clear. And that's where that can provide leaders with that immediate feedback regarding, the team's understanding. And then, it gives that opportunities for reflection, more inclusive participation, and probably more timely feedback to get, as I said, stay back on that path. So it certainly works really well, being able just to come back with different learning styles, walking away, regrouping, seeing where everyone's at, seeing their levels of understanding, and seeing if there's any that any muddiness, puddles, I suppose, on the way, that needs more clarification before then diving in. So and that's and we can do that in our own life as well. Like, we can do that many times where with levels of self-regulation, where is our weak points. Like, I know my weak points definitely are my life admin skills. Like, so I'm very much that high level thinker, and with those more attention to detail. If I don't actually have the time to do those things, I will more often than not either overlook them, or just as I was talking with you, trying to find my cable, my charger, yelling at everyone else and they're who stole it. And Ant comes into me and goes, "It's on your desk next to where." So it's it's those things that I kind of lose. Whereas if I look at the smaller things that I need to do, and knowing that's my weakness, so do I then leave those small things to a time where I can actually sit there and I don't have that distraction, that I can just go and do those small things? So do I then write them all down in a diary, and then I come back to that after the kids are in bed, after those things, like little things like, birthday invites, presents, like what do I need to do? There's tiny little things that really mean a lot, but I just don't, everyday life, I can completely overlook them or not do a very good job of them. So that's my reflection as well. And that actually allows me to go, something in my, I suppose, schema is that I don't need to be so immediate. Okay,
Yep.
it's okay to take that time to get back to someone. That's my strength. There's also my weakness there. So it's like I have to create that level of self-reflection that it doesn't, that it's okay, and I can let go of some of that, and I can still do it, but I can do it at a time that's going to actually be more beneficial to me. So that then decreases my stress levels and my tabs.
Yeah, that's a good good example. I think most people could relate to those life admin
Yep.
challenges. My biggest kryptonite, I refer to it as kryptonite in my life, is something simple like booking a flight and booking the right time. That stresses the shit out of me, and I have no idea why. But it's not that hard. My wife's great at that stuff, so I kind of make sure that she's let's say playing to her strengths with those types of things. But
Yep.
but yeah, I don't know why, for example, that for me. But yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff that's maybe similar to yours. For me, what I do is I just go, cool, that 1 hour that painful hour in my week is going to be put somewhere where I've at least got the energy for it. It's normally a Friday morning, which is kind of like torture to me earlier this morning. But I'll get it done, like bills and flights and crap like that requires my attention. You'd probably call it admin, but I know I need to do it. And but I'm also terrible at it, and at least I know that. Are there any other examples that come up within your with your clients, or are there any other strengths or weaknesses in clients that you see that are kind of common? Or
Yeah, I think it's got to do. Look, one thing that as I said before, I'm really just trying to really push with a lot of our clients at the moment is just taking notes, like as in taking notes from memory, taking notes without reliance on the tech and everything, and getting outside where maybe you might actually need that more open space, because open space can also, really connotate that whole feeling of clarity. Look, metacognitive strategies, like there's so much to do with mindfulness in this. Like there's such a great connection there, because you're thinking about thinking. It's like it's not conscious or unconscious. As I said, you can go into a massive scientific kind of void here on exactly metacognition. I don't want to go into that today because that's incredibly intense, but just to do those simplistic things where you might then have more of that those fractals around you, which then can create those alpha waves of relaxation that then opens the mind to better memory, because all our memory can really be firing from our prefrontal cortex. And that also allows us to understand, which is one of our new topics, Tom, coming up, is looking about the how. We get so focused and fixated on the why we're doing something, but it's how we're doing it is just as important, or how will we do it. And that's also part of metacognition. But that's a part 2 of our next podcast.
Unreal. Looking forward to that one. Nat, thanks so much for today. That was really interesting, metacognition, and I like that you're suffering in silence with your yeah. No, I've gone from life admin to talking metacognition. See, that's literally how I roll, as do you by the sounds of it. So yeah. And next time, the charger's on your desk, ready to be plugged in. Thanks so much, Nat. Chat soon.
See you guys. Bye, Tom. Bye.